Добрий день,
Welcome everybody joining us today. The medias and the Ukrinform continue our work on the day number 290 of our fight for freedom. Today we will focus on what the state is doing to identify and search of the missing personnel, as well as for the recovery of the bodies of the Ukrainian military. Let me introduce to you Oleh Kotenko, the Commissioner on Persons Gone Missing under Special Circumstances. Welcome, sir. The floor is yours. In the first place, I would like to greet everyone on the victory that we are now hearing. The Liman area has been pocketed. This is a great victory to us all. Thanks to our military, we have had a lot of victories, but this will also mean a lot of work in an effort to recover our military personnel, those who are now considered to be missing personnel. For more than 100 days, I have been working as a commissioner for the missing persons, and let me tell you what we have been doing on that issue. The loved ones are saying and asking us, why is it that you are not doing anything? What we are saying is we are working. It's that we are not vocal about it, but the result that I will inform you about is the result of this work. I have become the commissioner in late May, and the law on the commissioner was passed in April. As you understand, quite little time I have had so far to report on any achievement, especially given the wartime circumstances. It is up to you to assess the volume of work. The figures that people want from me to know are very specific: when, how, and how many. I'll be talking about the result of the work so far and our vision for the future in order to identify the missing people. I have prepared all the answers to possible questions. We need some technical help here. Meanwhile, we have a possibility to enjoy some conversation. I will not overload you with excessive information. I have been trying to be brief in terms of our possibilities, capabilities, and figures. Now, the main thing, of course, is the questions. I expect there will be a lot of them. And I will brief you on the work that we have achieved so far. We have heard things that our work is not that complicated. As a commissioner, I have developed a number of tracks. They have not been identified in legislation. The work that I'm engaged in is the work that is done unofficially under wraps, but we are doing it in an attempt to speed up the process of identifying missing persons. A preparatory phase is something we cannot do without. We have a staff of personnel searching for people in social networks using their own private capabilities. We are coming with analytical process to identify people. Communication side of the work is the next one. Research work, negotiation track, lawmaking activities. As for the structure of my remit, as you can see here, is that I have at my disposal the Secretariat, and people representing my office are here. The team is here. We have also a call center run by my advisor, Ms. Kotenko, also present here. Analytical center, my advisor, Mr. Khoroshek, he is in charge of the analytical work. Search teams have been established in 7 Ukrainian regions where the hostilities are taking place. These search teams are run by civilian administrations as well as by the general staff. And we are talking about the civil-military cooperation here, a place of meeting of our endeavors. As for the deoccupied territories, we have been working with the local authorities and myself, and I thank all the people who have been working on the project of identifying more than 200 bodies. You have probably heard about the city of Izum. The burial place at Izum was identified by our group, and I was a member of that group. Regional representations in the provinces, we have come to a conclusion that we need to have persons who are communicating with the family. Sometimes people do not understand what to do when there is a missing person, whom to turn to. People seem to believe that the state is not taking place in that process, which is not true. Public awareness and working with the loved ones is run by the local coordinators, 23 of them. We don't have such coordinators in the regions of Lugansk and Kherson, but I think very soon we will have such people there working locally meaning in the liberated territories. I will now come down to figures. For you to understand, these figures imply a lot of work. We have opened investigations of a lot of people, meaning that when the investigation process begins, we start a personal card on any possible information about the persons. When we talk to families, to military units, we gather audio recordings, photo recordings, their correspondence, leading to the beginning of the case with all the data included. Research of the bodies of the dead, 539 of them plus 25. The presentation was being prepared when 25 bodies have been added to our list. What does that mean? It means that we have an agreement with the Russian Federation on a recovery of the bodies in the territories uncontrolled by Ukraine. An agreement is there, and we are working to make sure that the bodies of the heroes are returned to Ukraine, and such steps are taking place 2-3 times per month. The recovery and search for the bodies in the number of 2026, meaning that at some point the relatives didn't know what had happened to a person. A person was either fighting in the battlefield or they were taken to the morgues and other circumstances. So there are a lot of people of that category, which is sad, but we have what we have. We are also searching in the locations confirmed by the video evidence, 492. And there are people that are in the occupied territories. We have evidence video from the UAVs and something we have been able to gather from the Telegram channels, the occupiers making videos, leading to us understanding that these are our military personnel. It is a sad situation, but this is the way it is. We have confirmed people who are now in captivity or have been released from captivity. People turn to us because they don't know whether their relatives are prisoners of war or they are not, and we are working to make sure that we find them. 162 people were returned from capture. We know that they are alive. And by the way, there were people turning to us, and they were deemed to have died, and these people turned out to be alive and have come home alive. And by the way, I had an advisor on legal terms, Mr. Ivan, and if there are questions addressed to him, you're welcome to ask them. Civil persons who have been identified or were forced to travel to Russia. We understand that there are people that we know have not gone missing, but we have requests to find them, and we were searching for them. Then we understood that these are people who, through Russia, city of Narva, found themselves in Ukraine, traveling through European countries, and this is how we found those people. Military personnel who have been identified, 965 of them. Sometimes there is no connection, and we don't have any connection with the military in the battlefield. Their relatives sometimes think that they have either gone missing or they cannot be contacted. So we launch a special profile on a person to start searching for them. And later on, it turns out that it was only because they didn't have any connection. When you are on a reconnaissance raid, you are not carrying telephone with you, and sometimes the telephones are destroyed to make sure that the enemy doesn't have information on the military developments. Thank goodness there are people who have been found alive. People who are prisoners of war, and we have 2,200 of those. What does that mean? It means that we have 100% evidence of the prisoners of war status. Through the International Red Cross organization, they have such a confirmation from Russia, so they are legally considered to be prisoners of war. Then there are video fragments when people are interrogated. People are saying what kind of military unit they belong to, the circumstances of their being captured. So there is an evidence to the effect that they are prisoners of war. When we see groups of our prisoners of war and their relatives can identify who these people are, and we know when they've gone missing. People that are considered to be missing, more than 4,000 of them. This is exactly the figure that journalists are striving to know. I cannot tell you exactly. This figure will never be a final one. When we enter the deoccupied territories, once we do that, we will find our dead personnel, and perhaps that number will be less or fewer. If our people are searched, this figure is adjustable. When will we have a final figure? Only after our victory is secured, the enemy is driven out of our territories, then we will know how many people have gone missing. The figure that I have shared with you, in that figure, 12 to 15% are civilians that have been requested to be searched for, but the majority of those missing, of course, are military personnel. I think this work will be continuing. We are working on it. While I'm talking to you, we have 7 teams working in Zaporizhia, Kherson directions, and in the Donetsk, including Kharkiv direction. We've been working there and elsewhere. There are evidence that we receive from the local people pointing to the graveyards, and there are a lot of Russian occupiers that are buried there. We will dive out those bodies, and then we will recover our heroes. Communicational aspect. We have call center. I will not say that we have a lot of stuff. 8 persons in particular, they're receiving calls. And of course, people calling more than once. Sometimes a family is calling when a husband is missing, then a brother is missing. That seems to be the same person. Letters and messages from the citizens, 1,153 of them. We are asking about the particular circumstances. Very sadly, we cannot always answer when, where, or in what condition the person is. And all is done within the framework of the Ukrainian legislation. As I think before this meeting, we had a get-together with the relatives of people searching for their loved ones, children, husbands. And this is a very challenging situation. People want to know where their loved ones are, in what state they are, whether they are wounded, fed, or other questions are asked. There is a lot of information that is not available to us, but we are doing our best. Lawmaking activities, together with the Ministry of Health Protection and other institutions, we have worked out a number of instructions and documents. The Cabinet of Ministers passed a decree on the 17th of June on the issue of disinterring and recovering of the bodies. We have a register of the people gone missing under special circumstances. The legal secondary aid is granted free of charge. We have also developed a bill guaranteeing the status of people who have been charged illegally. What I'm saying is that we are not working exclusively in our offices, and of course our legal experts are doing their best, but we want to make sure that everything is done in a legal way. This is the first point. The second point is that we are doing our field work, searching for the missing persons, working on all the possible options of finding and identifying them as soon as possible. As every person has a future plans, we also have ours. We want to find, search, and repatriate the bodies in the liberated territories. We will be working on every locality that we know about. We'll be working with the local population who might have some information on where and how the bodies have been buried. Recovery of the bodies from the territory that are not under our control. Next week there will be another step in recovering the bodies of our dead. There are locations where perhaps it'll take some time before we liberate those territories. There are also our plans to come up with a register of people gone missing under special circumstances. We have done a lot of work and have held meetings with the representatives of the central authorities for this register to be run in a legitimate way. Who must be enrolled in that, who must be enlisted, who must not be enlisted. But this will require amendments to the law. When we have a person who has stolen a bicycle and is on the run, should not be considered as a missing persons. There must be filters, the vetting procedures through the Interpol, through our service of border guards. We should know that these are people that have gone missing under special circumstances. A number of persons who have gone missing under special circumstances. The search is going on. There are a lot of people involved in this process. And there is good news here. When we know that people are prisoners of war, it means it's a good news that they are not missing. Here you see the contact information at the site of the Ministry of Integration. You will see the contact information of all our local representatives or our coordinators. They're running the communication with the families, trying to provide all the legal aid, meeting the representatives of the military units. Sometimes the people who are fighting at the front line don't have the possibility to talk to the relatives. This is a brief information. I have been trying to highlight the most important things with some kind of explanations, and I expect a lot of questions. Let us begin with the fact that we have seen recently a statement by the Ukrainian President aid to the effect that the Russians are not willing to recover the bodies of the dead occupiers from our land. What is the problem here? And at the end of the day, how many bodies have been given back to Russia? I understand that what the president was saying was that these are the dead bodies in the Russian territories. No, we are talking about Russian dead in the Ukrainian territory. President mentioned that they're in the refrigerators, they're in some kind of morgues, and they are not being recovered. There is an agreement, and we give back the bodies of every dead body that they ask for. Sometimes they drag their feet on that, sometimes for a week or 2 weeks. I don't know why. But once they ask for some recovery of some bodies, we respond accordingly. But why sometimes they don't ask for their dead, I don't know why. We are talking about 600 bodies that have been given back. As for the civilian Ukrainians who are now being kept by the Russians, I'm not the person capable of answering in terms of the Ukrainian prisoners. Once we have information and we know that people are being searched, we know that there are people in captivity, and of course this is run by the security service, and all the information which is available to us is given over to them, and the respective services are beginning the negotiation process on the people in captivity. What is the algorithm for the relatives to act upon if they know? If people know that their relatives are kept in captivities, what should they do? There are two answers here. If the relatives are in the unoccupied territory, they should do the following. One, they turn to the national police with a request on the person gone missing, and also to provide their DNA. Providing of the DNA does not necessarily mean that the person in question is already dead, but this is the procedure. Then they should turn to the National Investigation Bureau. Why is this? We should be clear that the person is a prisoner of war. When we talk to the Russians, if we don't come up with a specific name, they won't be able to confirm. So this is done to confirm that the person is a prisoner of war. And the third step is to turn to our office, the office of the commissioner. We have our telephone numbers, which are on the screen. There is one number missing, but I will inform you on that. 195-896-0421. We also have messengers available. For people living abroad, they don't have the ability to turn to the line 800. So there are other telephone numbers to be contacted through WhatsApp and other messengers, and to submit a request to search for their loved ones. Let us start the Q&A session. Ukrinform Irina Udodenko. What is the major complex issue in your work? There are a lot of hindrances and challenges. I always reiterate that the most important and challenging thing is the work with the relatives of the people gone missing. People want to know one thing: our relatives must be returned. And if there is a pause in between what we know and when the person comes back, either dead or alive, it takes time. And it is very difficult to explain that these are the circumstances that we are having now. I will not go into detail. I have just come back from a meeting with the relatives of the person fighting in the Bakhmut area. This is the intense fighting area, and the relatives are accepting this with a heavy heart. They charge us with inactivity, and I have had so many meetings with the people trying to explain to them that while they are searching for their loved ones, it will require some time. They should be patient. Another technical issue here is that when we deoccupy our territories, and I personally participated in such special territories, we are talking about the so-called mopping up operation, the clearing operation. Perhaps we'll go to the Liman area to work in those locations. We are entering, you see, territories that have not been demined already. There are volunteers who have become victims of the blasts because the demining has not taken place. Our specialists are not available everywhere, so people are in the risk area. Apart from the Red Cross organization, do you have other bodies helping you? We are currently negotiating on the memorandum with the International Commission on the Missing Persons. We've been working on that memorandum for more than 2 months. They stand ready to cooperate. There is another problem that I failed to mention, and this is DNA identification. We're not ready for that. We are not ready to come up with the results of the DNA analysis of so many people. The relatives want to get their dead back, but we cannot give it back unless there is a DNA analysis. And there are a lot of people who have not submitted their DNAs.
Так, ага.
Commissioner Kotenko, good to see you again.
Стоп, щось я про нього дуже сказати. Ну, ще раз.
Good to see you again, Commissioner. American Joshua Jones was killed fighting for Ukraine in August, and DPR has announced the intent to return his remains. I'm wondering if you've had any contact with Daria Morozova, the DPR Ombudsman for Human Rights, regarding Josh Jones's return.
Так. Відповім.
I will answer your questions. Since day one, when we learned about the problem, we've been working on that. I'm not going to tell you all the details, not to jinx the result, but the body will be recovered very soon.
Can you tell us, Commissioner, where the DNA tests were done for the victims at Izium?
Відповідаю, вони вже...
All the bodies that have been identified at Izium, when we are meaning the graveyard, all the DNAs have been collected. The analysis results are now being processed in the city of Kharkiv. But in this area, we are quite quick due to the efforts of the National Police. They're dealing with the DNA expertise and assessments. Thank you, friends. There doesn't seem to be any more questions. Thank you. To remind you, we have had Oleh Kotenko, the Commissioner for the people gone missing under special circumstances. Thank you for joining us. Dear colleagues, keep track about our upcoming briefings. Our team is preparing the schedule for the next week. Stay tuned.